just how strong was post-time skip Naruto? Because unlike many people in his world who developed a lot of very apparent differences, his might be more subtle, and it's going to be a big conversation around whether or not you actually think he got stronger or not. So let's go ahead and get into it. But before we do, please be sure to subscribe to the channel so I can keep bringing you more anime content. I think there's a big conversation to be had around how strong each of, these free characters from Team 7 were when they got back from the time skip, and I'm certainly going to cover the other two as well. But with Naruto being the main character, I thought it was a good idea to start with him. It's also a good idea because his development is probably the least obvious. And the reason for that is we have to look at the pre-time skip Naruto. Now, pre-time skip Naruto really didn't have a lot of versatile jutsu. He had a ton of chakra and a ton of tenacity, but not necessarily a lot of finesse. So, with that in mind, he had to develop a lot of skills. His existing jutsu were transformation, but only in the sexy jutsu, which was not combat applicable. He had Shadow Clone Jutsu, which was by far and away his best move. He had the Rasengan, which was a very generic anime move, but I will admit does have the probably highest attack power of all of his moves. And then he had the Summoning Jutsu, which he doesn't use all that much, but, I love seeing the frogs, so that's nice. And that's kind of where he topped out. He didn't really learn a lot of anything else, pre-time skip. Those were his worked up moves over the course of that. And then when he gets back from his time skip, he's learned how to make a Rasengan without needing clones to do it. So technically he's only just grasped the basics of a move. Now it is an incredibly complex move, but still only the basics of it that any other regular person would have to have done on their own. Yeah, well, he has more shadow clones. He has a much larger pool of shadow clones because he no longer wastes as much chakra. And I actually think that's cool. And there's a whole conversation that I plan to have around whether Naruto could have made better use of his shadow clones. But that's not exactly a new move. As a matter of fact, there's only one real key difference when we look at post-time skip Naruto versus pre-time skip Naruto. His taijutsu. Of the various jutsu types, I would strongly say that, taijutsu is the only one disrespected less than genjutsu. Because, with this being a, show where you can summon animals, create massive fireballs, and do any other amount of weird things, taijutsu just kind of always seemed like the most basic aspect. But the funny thing is that it was one of the ones he was always best at. And there's a very strong reason for that, and it ties with the only other thing he did get good at with his departure from the Hidden Village. That was the fact that he got better at making shadow clones. Now, some people didn't like the amendment that shadow clones pass information back when they have, been destroyed or recalled. I never minded it because, truth be told, it actually always worked that way. If you pay attention to Naruto's progress in the pre-time skip era, he did learn quite a bit faster than some of the others necessarily thought he would, and that can easily be attributed to shadow clones. I think that the fact that he could now make even more shadow clones, and it's not like he could make a small amount before anyway, the fact he can make shadow clones and then would recall them from his training meant that he gained near constant combat experience. Multiplied on a scale of however many he had made. And keep in mind, because, the Shadow Clone is a perfect physical clone, it just doesn't have all of the user's chakra, they were all perfect to, box and learn various taijutsu skills in that time period, which is ideal for him. The only other thing he possibly could have done to better his taijutsu ability would have been to either A, master transformation to turn into weapons, which he'd kind of already done, but we never really see again, so that he could have a more versatile tool array, or same thing, but with summoning, being able to summon various types of weapons to his side if he needs them. That's kind of it, because the ability to copy those weapons, the ability of everything, I guess the only other thing would be if he could have mastered transferring the Shadow Clone technique onto weapons, like we later see Hiruzen do during the war. But even then, I would have loved that. But just knowing the fact that he essentially became probably the strongest taijutsu member next to Guy, I think that that's an impressive achievement, and we don't talk about it enough. That having been said, while that is quite clearly his strongest skill and the thing he worked hardest on, he didn't get the bump in power that a lot of other characters get. I'm not going to get too much into it here because obviously I plan on doing videos for both Sakura and for Sasuke, and maybe even a video just covering the other Konoha 11. But, you know, comparatively, you know, Sasuke's learned a whole bunch of jutsu from Orochimaru, and he can coat, you know, his Kirin to a sword. Sakura becomes basically, you know, super strong to a level that she's a tank. Naruto, by comparison, does not actually seem to have grown that much, and while we do know that he has more to do as the main character, it would have been nice to see more progress made in that time skip. But let me know what you think. Did you love his return? I mean, to be honest, I loved his return. I just think it's kind of funny that of all the things we could have seen him develop for powers, he didn't really get anything in that comeback. So let me know what you thought of it in the comments below. And if you feel like supporting the channel, please be sure to check out my Patreon, where you can contribute a few dollars a month to help the channel grow.